This big cooldown is about to expand across the United States, but first, lots of big storms are going to also move through from the Central Plains over to the East Coast. This video has the details on all of those wild changes in the next 10 minutes.
One Nation Weather.
I'm starting today's video with a look at some custom graphics highlighting the best chance areas for showers and storms and the associated systems bringing them for this weekend. You can see the main culprit for a lot of active weather from the southern plains all the way to the northeast U.S. is going to be system number 1 as of our Saturday evening, with low pressure stationed around Missouri and a warm front lifting north into the Ohio Valley. Especially behind that warm front and ahead of the cold front moving in from the southern plains, there's going to be a fair game area for not only showers and storms, but also some severe weather and flooding chances to ramp up. In addition to that system number 2, this is the one that's going to bring the cool down later on. It's going to start ejecting out with its cold front into the north central plains. At least some isolated showers and storms could be possible up there, along with some gusty winds. That will include parts of the Dakotas as well as Minnesota at the minimum through our late Saturday time frame. By Sunday evening, both systems will have moved east a little bit. System number 1 generally weakening down with its main influence from the Gulf to the East Coast states. Isolated severe weather and flooding could still be possible as it gets closer to those zones, but it will be on the weakening trend as the weekend finishes. Along the tail end of that cold front, we will see more of a stationary type boundary as it stalls out near Texas, and that will actually help in influencing and increasing the moisture in the southern and central plains for system number 2's strengthening cold front, all the way from the upper Midwest back down to the southern plains. So system number 2 will bring a chance for storms, some of which may be severe on our Sunday. Looking at this jet stream guidance from the European model, we'll be able to visualize where the jet stream energy pieces will be fueling our systems over the next couple of days. And you can see the jet stream energy responsible for system number 1 and system number 2 by looking at this guidance for around the Saturday evening time frame. Here's system number 1 and its energy set to be in a broad corridor in parts of the southern and southeastern U.S., along and south of where especially you're seeing those greens. That's where the best chance for severe weather will be on Saturday and Saturday night, and then we'll see those chances get closer to the Gulf and East Coast by around the Sunday and Sunday night time frame. Keep a close eye on that next piece of energy, though. It will be strengthening moving out of the north central plains out of Saturday into Sunday, and especially ahead of this energy, we could get another renewed corridor for some severe weather. Let's go ahead and talk about some of those risk zones for this weekend, and then a little bit later on in the video, I'll talk about the continued progression of system number 2 and how it will bring the cool down. Here's a look at the Storm Prediction Center's severe thunderstorm outlook for our Saturday, June 7th, as well as our Saturday night time frame. You can see they have a level 1 to level 2 to even level 3 of 5 severe weather risk along and south of that broad energy that is set to be moving over the southern and southeastern U.S. Zooming in a little closer, you can see that we have a marginal risk, a level 1 of 5 over a lot of Texas and Oklahoma, stretching all the way as far north as places like Missouri, southern Illinois, parts of Kentucky, and over to central Virginia, and as far south as northern Florida. The peak part of the risk, though, that's going to include eastern Oklahoma, eastern Texas, all the way to the Carolinas and in points in between, with that enhanced level 3 of 5, including parts of Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Some major population centers in that level 3 of 5 include Little Rock, Memphis, Tupelo, Huntsville, Birmingham, and Atlanta. Particularly a swath of damaging winds is expected as a thunderstorm cluster only strengthens throughout the day while moving east. Taking a look at some possible timing for these storms now using the HRRR model, you can see that as of the time that I'm posting this video, we already have an ongoing cluster of storms moving through eastern Arkansas. As that exits places like Little Rock and Pine Bluff and Jonesboro and gets closer towards Memphis, Tennessee, Jackson, Tennessee, Corinth, and Tupelo in Mississippi, it's only expected to strengthen with that enhanced risk, indicating that highest threat area for damaging winds of 60 to 70 miles per hour, as well as some spotty hail and even a tornado or two through the early to mid-afternoon. Around the 1, 2, 3 o'clock central time frame as well, we could see at least a few severe storms here and there in the marginal and slight risk zones as far back to the southwest as Dallas and Texarkana, and as far to the north as places like Evansville, Kentucky. That's really going to be the name of the game as we go through the rest of this timing. Some spottier severe storms on the northern and southern side of our main cluster of severe storms, but the main cluster is really just going to continue progressing through the enhanced and slight risk zones. You can see that's going to likely move through parts of Nashville, Huntsville, Birmingham, some point through the mid to late afternoon hours if this guidance holds, maybe getting closer to Chattanooga, Tennessee, with more scattered to widespread damaging winds in the peak part of the risk zone as we get closer towards sundown this evening. Notice the backward C shape of that main cluster of storms. That is why it is going to be bringing that more widespread coverage of damaging winds, because it is going to be pushing out, especially on the leading edge of curlicue there as it moves east. Once we get past the southern part of the Appalachians, I think we're going to start to see the risk go down. That's why the Storm Prediction Center has places like Greenville, South Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina in the level 2. But keep in mind, at least some severe weather could continue even into the middle of the night, even as far back to the west as in more parts of the slight and enhanced risk zone, as we see some pop-up storms there, as well as some back to West Texas behind that main line. You can see there are going to be two main areas for severe storms as indicated by the Storm Prediction Center's outlook for our Sunday, June 8th, as well as Sunday night. One of those is going to be over parts of Georgia, as well as the Carolinas and the Delmarva region ahead of that first cold front, but the general risk is going to be peaking back in parts of the southern plains, as well as on up into the mid-Mississippi Valley ahead of that next cold front. We have a level 2 that's set to extend from New Mexico all the way up to Illinois, back down to Louisiana, and in points in between in that triangular fashion. And then especially in Oklahoma and Texas and the Red River Valley, that's where we're going to have the best chance for severe weather, with a lot of daytime heating set to ramp up there. Looking at the storm energy guidance from the European model, you can see that this weekend really is loaded up in terms of storm fuel for system number 1, at least through our Saturday, from Texas all the way to the Carolinas, with modest instability there. And then especially as we go into Sunday, look at how much instability is going to build up ahead of that second system, particularly in the southern plains. That is an abundance of fuel that's going to be around Texas and Oklahoma by 1, 2, and 3 o'clock before our main storms on our Sunday. That is why we're going to get that biggest threat for severe weather, possibly the entire weekend, to really ramp up in those zones, possibly even with some supercells deeper through the afternoon and evening. Our storm systems won't just stop at the end of this weekend, so let's play out how they're set to evolve as we go into next week, particularly with the afternoon rounds of storms. Here's a look at what's set to be going on around Monday afternoon, with the greens indicating the best chance zone for more scattered to widespread thunderstorm development. That, of course, is going to be peaking along and ahead of that next cold front, your second one that's going to be bringing in the cool down on its backside from Texas and Oklahoma, where we could get more severe weather on Monday, through parts of the Mid-South, and then in a thin quarter all the way on up into the Ohio Valley and lower Great Lakes. Some severe weather and just some general storms as well look possible, if not likely at times, through our late Monday. In fact, that second system is going to be what really carries us into our Tuesday, as well as it gets closer to the East Coast as well as the Gulf Coast. Sure, it will pick up some energy in the remnants of that first system that I've been talking about, but in general, it's going to be carrying the threats from Texas and Louisiana all the way up to Maine, with pop-up thunderstorms at the minimum in those zones by around Tuesday, June 10th. That's going to be the name of the game as we go through the early to mid part of next week. We're probably especially going to be seeing closer to the Gulf Coast more rounds of storms, up the East Coast, a couple of pop-ups here and there. To make that general pattern of shift a little bit easier for you to interpret, here's a look at a custom graphic showing the transition expected around early to mid next week. This particularly is for around Monday, Tuesday, and into early Wednesday, ahead of that slowing cold front with system number 2. From the southern plains to the mid-south, the Gulf Coast region, and then up the East Coast, storms will still be possible, although the risk for severe weather will likely begin going down for a lot of spots, especially in a broader sense, day by day. Behind the front, over parts of the central and north central plains, the mid and upper Mississippi Valley, and the Great Lakes region, there will be much cooler air, and I'm about to break that down. Further to the west, where no front has really touched you, the western U.S., you are going to be very warm in those zones, from California and Oregon and Washington all the way into parts of the Rockies region, much warmer than average in terms of temperature anomalies as we go out of this weekend and into next week. Let's take a look at the daily forecasted high temperatures from the National Digital Forecast Database. This will help me better illustrate those changes for you. Starting with our Saturday, you can see, especially ahead of that first front in parts of the southern and southeastern U.S., we're going to have plenty of 80s to go around, and as you get closer to the Gulf Coast, a lot of low to mid 90s, especially with heat and humidity. This is going to feel like the hottest air you felt all season, more than likely, from Texas over to the Carolinas and Florida and in points in between. Further north from that first front, though, not too bad, around to even below average already in parts of the Midwest with mid and upper 70s. But you can see out of Saturday into Sunday, we're actually going to warm up a bit in the Midwest. Chicago near 80 ahead of that second front, going to be in the mid-80s in parts of central Missouri, with that severe weather risk set to be at least around level 2 in those zones. Back down to Oklahoma and Texas, the supercells or whatever storms we get later on Sunday will be tapping into mid to upper 90s, so you can bet that they're going to have plenty of daytime heating to really work into and go severe. Look at what's going to be going on in the west all of this time through this weekend. The evolving ridge, as especially west of the Rockies in particular, in the valleys, we're going to see lots of 90s working north, all the way to the eastern Washington valleys. We could see some near triple-digit heat by our Sunday, and some of those values that we get in the valleys of western Oregon in the low to mid-90s, those could be near record high levels. Watch the cool down behind that second front, though, already bringing 60s and 70s to the north central plains and east of the Rockies in the northern U.S. around our Sunday, and those 70s will only sink south more by Monday as that front pushes east. These are all the zones set to be behind that front over the north central U.S. by around our Monday. So from Nebraska and the Dakotas all the way over to Ohio and in points in between, looks like a pretty nice mass of mild temperatures for this time of the year, 60s and lows to mid 70s on our Monday, and even further south, some of the low to mid 80s we get in Kansas and Oklahoma. That's around to below average for this time of the year on a Monday afternoon. Monday into Tuesday, we'll see that trough or that dip in the jet stream bringing the cold front get a little bit even closer to the east coast. So around and north of it, plenty of 70s to go around and some lower humidity. South of it, staying on the warmer side, and that's where the pop-up storms will probably even continue deeper through next week. In the southeast and the Gulf Coast regions, more 80s to go around, and eventually we'll see that likely ridge move out of the west and towards the plains, so we won't just have heat back west of the Rockies, but by mid to late next week we'll probably have more 90s and even near triple-digit heat expanding into parts of the south central U.S., the plains, and towards the east. Yeah, the dog days of summer look to be coming. With that being said, that's all I have for this update, except for a quick reminder to also be alert for flooding in especially the south central U.S., but even in other zones that get storms. Heavy rain can produce quick flooding, and you don't want to drive on flooded roads. Turn around, don't drown, as they always say. Before you look out for flooding, though, on those roadways, make sure you're looking out for that subscribe button down below this video and hit that notification bell, too, so that you catch my forecast videos and live streams in the future. You can also check out the weather belt link down in the description for a free trial to the model maps I use. That's all I got for this Saturday midday update, though. I'll catch you in the next one, which will likely be some point late Sunday or on our Monday. Hope this keeps you tuned for all the weather for this weekend, and that's all I got to say. God bless you, everyone, and I'll catch you in the next one.